There is a book that has been banned, burned, and condemned for over 500 years, and yet it refuses to die. Every dictator who ever sees a throne has read it. Every president who ever won an election has lived by its rules. Every CEO who ever crushed a competitor has whispered its lessons to themselves in the dark. The book is called The Prince, and the man who wrote it changed the way humanity thinks about power forever. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. Say his name in a room full of politicians, and watch what happens. Some will smirk, some will look away, but none will say they haven't read him. The word Machiavellian has become a curse, a label for liars, manipulators, and tyrants. But here is the strange thing. The man behind that word was not a king. He was not a general. He was not a warlord. He was a clerk, a government official from Florence, Italy, born in 1469, into a world that chewed up honest men and spit out their bones. Florence in the Renaissance was a paradise wrapped around a slaughterhouse. It was the most beautiful city in Europe. Artists painted masterpieces on chapel ceilings. Poets wrote verses that made grown men weep. Marble statues stood gleaming in the piazzas under golden light. But beneath all that beauty, the city was rotting. Powerful families waged silent wars against each other. Assassinations were planned over dinner. Popes sold salvation like merchants selling cloth. And alliances were made at breakfast and broken by noon. This was the world young Machiavelli grew up in. A world where trust got you killed, and innocence was just a slower kind of suicide. By his late 20s, he had climbed the ranks of Florence's government. He became a diplomat, an envoy, a man sent into the courts of tyrants to negotiate on behalf of a fragile republic. He did not carry a sword. He carried his mind, and his mind was a weapon sharper than anything forged in steel. He sat across from kings and cardinals. He listened to their lies. He watched their strategies unfold. He studied the way powerful men moved through the world, how they smiled while planning betrayal, how they wept in public while signing death warrants in private. And one man in particular left a scar on his mind that would never heal. Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander VI, a man who combined beauty with savagery, charisma with ruthlessness. Borgia conquered cities not just with armies, but with psychology. He knew when to offer a handshake, and he knew when to offer a noose. Machiavelli was sent to observe Borgia up close. What he saw shook him to his core. He watched Borgia invite his enemies to a peace banquet, then have them strangled before the wine was finished. He watched a man use cruelty not out of madness, but out of precision. Every killing had a reason. Every act of terror had a purpose. And Machiavelli found himself asking a question he could not shake. What if this is how the world actually works? What if the stories about good kings and noble rulers are just fairy tales we tell children so they can sleep at night? That question haunted him. It followed him home. It sat beside him in the dark. And then everything fell apart. In 1512, the Florentine Republic collapsed. The Medici family seized power. And Machiavelli, loyal to the old government, was arrested. They threw him into a cell. They accused him of treason. And they tortured him. They tied his wrist behind his back and hoisted him into the air by his arms until his shoulders ripped from their sockets. This happened again and again and again. He never confessed, because there was nothing to confess. Eventually they released him, broken, humiliated, stripped of everything. He was banished to a small farmhouse in the countryside. No title, no position, no influence, just silence and his thoughts. And that is where he wrote it, every evening. He put on his old government robes. He sat at a wooden desk. And by candlelight, he began writing a book that would terrify the world. What exactly did Machiavelli write that was so dangerous? Let us open the book. Let us look inside. The Prince begins with a deceptively simple premise. Forget what you have been told about leadership. Forget the sermons. Forget the ideals. Look at what actually happens when men hold power. And what actually happens is ugly. Machiavelli argued that a ruler who tries to be good all the time will inevitably be destroyed by those who are not good. The world is full of wolves, and a lamb, no matter how virtuous, is still meal. This was a direct attack on every political philosopher who came before him. Plato imagined a perfect republic ruled by philosopher kings. Aristotle taught that virtue was a foundation of good government. The church preached that rulers were chosen by God and must reflect his goodness. Machiavelli looked at all of that and said it was fantasy. He did not write about how a prince should behave in paradise. He wrote about how a prince must behave in a world full of liars, traitors, and ambitious men who would slit your throat for a chance at your crown. And the first hard truth he delivered was this: morality and power do not follow the same rules. In your private life, honesty is admirable, generosity is noble, forgiveness is divine. But in the arena of statecraft, those same qualities can destroy you. A ruler who is too generous drains his treasury. Then he must raise taxes. Then his people hate him. A ruler who forgives every betrayal invites more betrayal. A ruler who always tells the truth will be outplayed by every liar in the room. Machiavelli was not celebrating evil. He was diagnosing it, like a doctor describing a disease, without pretending it does not exist. And then he arrived at the question that has echoed across 5 centuries. Is it better to be loved or feared? His answer still lands like a fist. A wise ruler would want both. But since the two rarely exist together, choose fear. Why? Because love depends on other people. They love you when it is convenient for them. They love you when you are winning. The moment you stumble, the moment you show weakness, love vanishes like smoke. Fear is different. Fear stays. Fear does not require gratitude. Fear does not fade with the next news cycle. A man who fears you thinks twice before betraying you. A man who merely loves you will betray you the moment someone offers him more. But Machiavelli was not stupid. He added a line that most people ignore. Be feared, but never hated. Hatred breeds rebellion. Hatred creates martyrs. Hatred turns subjects into assassins. A feared ruler is respected. A hated ruler is counting down to his own funeral. The difference is crucial. Fear comes from strength and consistency. Hatred comes from cruelty that feels personal, random, or excessive. The prince must be harsh only when necessary, and generous whenever possible. He offered a brutal piece of advice. If a new ruler must commit cruelties, commit them all at once. Swift, decisive, total. Do not drag suffering out over months and years. Deliver the blow, let the shock fade, then spend the rest of your rule distributing favors and rewards. People forget pain faster than they forget kindness, if you time it right. And then Machiavelli revealed something even more disturbing, perhaps the deepest insight in the entire book. A prince does not need to actually be virtuous. He simply needs to appear virtuous. He should seem compassionate. He should seem faithful. He should seem honest, humane, and religious. But behind that mask, he must be ready at any moment to become the opposite. Because in politics, perception is reality. What people believe about you matters more than what you actually are. Control the story, and you control the kingdom. He compared the ideal ruler to 2 animals, the fox and the lion. The fox is clever. It detects traps. It sees deception before it strikes. The lion is powerful. It terrifies enemies. It crushes opposition through sheer force. A ruler who is only a fox will be overwhelmed by brute force. A ruler who is only a lion will walk blindly into traps. You must be both, and you must know which animal to become at exactly the right moment. Here is what should keep you up at night. Machiavelli wrote The Prince over 500 years ago, but it reads like it was written yesterday, because the leaders who shaped our world followed its lessons whether they admitted it or not. Napoleon Bonaparte did not just read The Prince. He studied it obsessively. His personal copy was filled with handwritten notes in the margins. He underlined passages. He argued with the text. He treated it like a conversation with a mentor, and then he applied it. When Napoleon seized control of France, he did not simply grab power. He engineered the appearance of legitimacy. He held votes that he controlled. He wrapped dictatorship in the language of democracy. He censored newspapers while proclaiming freedom of speech. He was the fox wearing the lion's crown. And for over a decade, it worked. Joseph Stalin understood a different chapter of the book, the chapter about cruelty and consolidation. Stalin did not kill millions out of madness. That is the comfortable explanation. The reality is more frightening. Every purge had a political calculation behind it. Every show trial sent a message. Every engineered famine broke the will of a population that might have resisted. He concentrated his cruelties. He made examples of the few to control the many. And then he built schools. He built hospitals. He won a world war. When he died, millions of Soviet citizens sobbed in the streets. They feared him, but they did not hate him. At least not enough. That is Machiavelli's formula in action, and it is terrifying precisely because it worked. But this is not just a playbook of tyrants. That is the lie we tell ourselves to feel safe. Abraham Lincoln is carved into a mountainside. He freed the slaves. He saved the Union. He is America's moral conscience made flesh. And he was one of the most Machiavellian leaders in history. Lincoln suspended the right of habeas corpus during the Civil War. He imprisoned journalists who criticized the war effort. He shut down newspapers. He delayed the Emancipation Proclamation for months, not because he doubted slavery was evil, but because the political timing was wrong. He manipulated Congress. He played rival factions against each other within his own cabinet. He made backroom deals that would have scandalized the public if they had known. And all of it served a greater purpose. Winning the war, preserving the nation, ending slavery. Was he moral? Yes. Was he Machiavellian? Absolutely. The two are not always opposites. And that is perhaps the most uncomfortable realization of all. Now, pull the lens forward into our world, into this century. Corporate boardrooms run on Machiavelli, whether anyone says his name or not. Every product launch is a carefully crafted performance. Perception management, image control, the appearance of innovation masking the machinery of profit. Political campaigns are masterclasses in Machiavellian strategy. The staged town hall, the leaked opposition research, the debate performance designed not to inform but to dominate. Social media itself is a Machiavellian arena. We curate our profiles. We manage our images. We present versions of ourselves that are strategically designed to influence how others perceive us. We are all, in our small and daily ways, practicing what Machiavelli preached. And modern psychology backs him up. Study after study confirms that humans respond to perception more than reality. We judge leaders not by their actual decisions, but by the narratives those leaders construct around their decisions. Frame a harsh action as necessary sacrifice, and people will call you brave. Fail to frame a kind action at all, and no one will remember it. Machiavelli understood this before the word psychology even existed. He understood that power does not live in the act itself. It lives in the story told about the act. Control the story. Control the world. So now we arrive at the question that has no clean answer. Was Machiavelli right? And even if he was, should we follow him? This is where the ground gets unsteady beneath your feet. Because the prince does not offer you comfort. It does not tell you that good people win. It does not promise that justice prevails. It tells you that the people who understand power survive. And the people who don't are consumed by it. That is not an inspiring message, but it might be an honest one. Some scholars believe Machiavelli was not serious at all. They argue that The Prince is a work of dark satire, a mirror held up to the Medici family that had tortured and exiled him, a way of saying, this is what you are. Look at yourselves. See the monster in the reflection. There's evidence for this reading. Machiavelli dedicated the book to Lorenzo de' Medici, the grandson of the very dynasty that destroyed his career. Why would a victim offer a sincere gift to his tormentor, unless the gift was poison disguised as perfume? Others point to his second great work, Discourses on Livy, where Machiavelli argues passionately for republics, for citizen participation, for the collective wisdom of the people over the ambition of one man. In that book, he sounds like a completely different person, a democrat, an idealist, a man who believed that the best government is one where power is shared and checked and challenged. So, who is the real Machiavelli? The cold strategist of The Prince? Or the passionate Republican of the Discourses? Maybe the answer is both. Maybe Machiavelli understood something that we still struggle to accept, that the world contains both darkness and light, and any honest thinker must reckon with both. He did not write The Prince because he loved cruelty. He wrote it because he had seen what happens to people who pretend cruelty does not exist. They are crushed. They are exiled. They are tortured in prison cells, while the ruthless men they underestimated sit on golden thrones. He wrote it as a warning, a survival guide for a world that does not play fair. And that world has not disappeared. It has not softened. It has not evolved beyond the truths Machiavelli laid bare on those candlelit pages. Every day, in every corner of this planet, someone is making a calculation. Tell the truth or protect themselves. Be kind or be strategic. Do what is right or do what works. We all live in that tension. Every single one of us. Machiavelli did not create that tension. He simply refused to look away from it. He died in 1527. Poor, forgotten, still exiled from the city, he loved more than anything in the world. The Prince was not published until 5 years after his death. He never saw the controversy. He never heard the accusations. He never knew his name would become an adjective, a synonym for everything dark in the human exercise of power. But here is the final irony. The man who wrote the most brutally honest book about power died powerless. The man who taught princes how to rule could not save himself. And maybe that is the darkest lesson of all. That understanding power and possessing power are two very different things. That seeing the truth clearly does not protect you from it. That the world Machiavelli describes so perfectly swallowed him whole, just like it swallows everyone who is not strong enough, or ruthless enough, or lucky enough to stay on top. The Prince is not a book that tells you what to believe. It is a book that dares you to stop pretending. And 500 years later, we still have not accepted that dare. If this changed the way you think about power, stay here, because the next story goes even deeper, into a place where the rules of morality dissolve entirely, and only the raw mechanics of human nature remain. You are not ready for what comes next, but you will watch it anyway.